Destination Medicine is a collaborative initiative of regional training hubs. With first-hand lessons learned from those who have gone before, this podcast is designed to assist and inspire anyone interested in pursuing a medical career in rural and regional Australia.
Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Nicole Goodman. Since primary school, Dr. Grace Nelson has wanted to be a country doctor. Now she's very happily there. Working at Dubbo Health Service, Dr. Nelson says she enjoys a balance of intellectual rigour and community service while living in a beautiful environment, not too far from family and friends. Dr. Nelson says her internship and residency in Dubbo is giving her wide and varied experience that's making her a better clinician. She describes it as the best of both worlds, professionally and personally. Dr. Nelson starts by explaining why she first chose medicine to Jeff Waters.
I first had the thought or idea of doing medicine probably in about year 7 or 8. When I started high school and started to do science and maths and realised that it was very interesting and I enjoyed to do those subjects. And so the thought kind of started there. And then as I kind of progressed through high school, I obviously learnt more about what medicine was, and it was such an appealing job to me. Throughout my life, I've had some exposures and interactions with the healthcare system, and it was always a very positive experience. Ones where I was made to feel better, and I wanted to be able to do that and help others as best I can in that way too.
What else attracted you to the whole idea?
I like the fact that you can use your brain and it's a lot of thinking and problem solving, but at the same time you also have interactions with a whole host of different people who you may not have met otherwise, and you get to make an impact and positively change people's lives, and that's your job, and you get to do that every day.
Very fulfilling. Can you tell us about the intern application process? Did you attend any information sessions?
Yeah, so I applied through the rural preferential pathway, so applying directly to hospitals based in regional settings. So as part of that, I visited Dubbo Hospital and had a tour in my second last year of uni to kind of get to meet the people who, the medical admin and some doctors who were working there to get first-hand experience. And I also was a student at another regional hospital, Tamworth, so I'd had that exposure before applications. And then before applying, I used the eRecruit Med website to get some information on other regional hospitals that I hadn't had the opportunity to visit, and then applied directly to each hospital, Dubbo being my first preference. And then once you submit your applications, then if you're lucky enough, interviews are offered, and then you complete your interviews and then rank which regional hospital you preference and then wait for the results to come out.
You mentioned the website there. Were there any other resources that you can point our listeners to?
So eRecruit was the main resource that was like a physical resource. I had a lot of word of mouth information about regional hospitals in general and personal experiences from people that were in years above me in uni or interns at hospitals that I come across. So a lot of my information was word of mouth as opposed to a resource.
You deliberately chose a pathway through, that took you to rural health care and regional health care, and you're now working at Dubbo Health Service as a resident. What led you to end up there?
So I was born and bred in Bathurst, which is a regional town in New South Wales, and I have a lot of family in rural and regional towns. So from an early age, I had a lot of exposure to country life, regional life, and the kind of barriers or different challenges that face people in these areas. I then went to university through the joint medical program with Newcastle and Armidale and did my first 3 years in Armidale, followed by my 4th year in Tamworth. and fifth year in Newcastle. So I spent the majority of my uni time in regional areas and had the opportunity to do my pracs in rural areas of Nyngan and Narrabri. So throughout like all my training, I knew that there is a deficit in the regional health community, and growing up in a regional area, I knew that's somewhere where I wanted to stay, and especially to be surrounded or be close by to family is something that was really important to me. So Dubbo and a regional centre like Dubbo ticked all my boxes, and I was really lucky enough to get there.
Is it more that you wanted to overcome those deficits and those challenges for your patients, or was it more that you just really wanted to live in a rural area?
I think it's generally a combination of both. In coming from a regional area and having all the life experience of that, I am aware of challenges faced by regional people and rural people. And so it was the best of both worlds to be able to live in a place where I'm comfortable and feel supported, but also have a chance to make a difference.
What is it about the regional rural lifestyle that you love so much?
Well, I find that in regional communities, there's this support and comfort that comes along with that. From a working perspective, simple things like there's less travel to work, which means you've got more time to spend outside of work pursuing other interests that you have. In a smaller area, you get to know everyone in the hospital, from the consultants and surgeons and physicians to the allied health staff and the maintenance staff, and that builds community. And then with that, you have a community outside of the hospital. You might work together, but you'll run into people outside of the hospital, and it creates a great network that's friendly and helpful. And because there's less people around, you do get to know everyone else better, and you can have extra support and increased networks because of the limited numbers. And in rural areas, you get a lot of opportunities because there's less people than colleagues I've had in regional centres. So much more hands-on work. You get more contact with bosses. They get to know what you and your interests are. And because of that, they become invested in you as well and bring opportunities that you may not have found elsewhere.
And being in Dubbo, did you achieve your desire to be closer to family?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got, obviously, mum and dad are in Bathurst, which is about 2 hours away. I've got a brother in Nyngan, which is about 2 hours the other side of Dubbo, family in Dubbo and Orange. So, yeah, it's a great spot.
Grace, was there anything from your interview that you believe assisted in you being offered a placement?
I think from the interviews, having my experience of living and completing university and doing pracs in a rural area gave me a lot of experience to draw from and to answer questions, which if I hadn't have done that might have been difficult or just had less things to talk about and discuss. So I think that, as well as going and visiting hospitals before the interviews, gave a different take or a fresh take on interview questions, and you can personalise them a lot more if you've got experience in that.
So you'd advise people to study up on their hospitals around regional areas?
Yeah, absolutely, and visit if you can.
Grace, what do you consider the highlights of your internship so far?
I think I've been very fortunate so far with my internship and residency that there's been a lot of highlights. So from a learning perspective, there's a lot of hands-on real-time learning in a regional area. So from just having patient interactions and taking histories, but also I've had the opportunity to put arterial lines in and chest drains in and joint aspirates, which in speaking to other people may not have had that experience somewhere else. And that comes from showing interest, but also having those close relationships with your registrars and bosses that they think of you first to do procedures and to learn.
Do you think that helps you become a better clinician?
Absolutely. It's very different to read something from a book or watch someone else do it. But when you do it yourself, you're learning muscle memory, and solidifies what you learn so much better.
Any other highlights?
Yes. So being a smaller community, smaller JMO numbers, which means you really get to know and make friends and support each other because you're going through a lot of similar experiences, and it's quite bonding. Because there's less of you, you get to know your consultants better and they become invested in your interests and where you want to go career-wise, and they will think of opportunities, or if, say, for instance, research opportunities come up, bosses will think of you directly because they are invested in your training, which is something very different.
And what's been the most challenging aspect of what you've been doing?
No matter how prepared for the next step in your career or the next step in whatever you're doing, there's always a step up which brings kind of new and uncertain experiences and times. But I think that's pretty universal to every person going from, say, med school to internship or internship to residency. So I don't think that's quite different from a rural versus metropolitan setting. I guess challenging in the clinical sense that we are further from tertiary centres, which does make treatment difficult, and there's a lot of logistics that sometimes have to be ironed out. But again, that's just something that you have to take on board and work around because you're in a rural setting.
When you moved from medical student to intern, what were some of the differences that you noticed in how you have continued your medical education?
So I think the last year of uni really tried to set me up to be a independent learner. So that was good, and you were studying for exams at that time. When you start internship, there's not necessarily an exam that you have to do. So any learning or research that you do is more so out of interest or cases that you're seeing. So there's a different kind of drive to learn new things. And there's also a lot of on-the-job learning, whether you have to look up antibiotic dosing or something like that. It's a lot of real-time things. So you learn a lot of research skills and asking for help to improve your medical knowledge and application of that knowledge.
When you began studying, was your choice of university influenced by where you would undertake your training?
Not initially. So I applied very broadly to every New South Wales and some Victorian medical schools because I knew at the end of the day I wanted to do medicine and I would go wherever I needed to for that. I was extremely fortunate that in getting a place in the joint medical program between Newcastle and Armidale, you could preference whether you wanted to go to Newcastle or Armidale. So I preferenced Armidale to stay in a rural setting and immerse myself in rural medicine from the get-go, basically.
And did you have, or do you have now, a mentor or a person of significant influence, and how might that have helped you?
From internship and residency, there's a couple of important clinicians that I look up to and try and emulate different characteristics that they have. It's really nice to have some people to look up to kind of, be a sounding board for decisions or that you're trying to make or how you're going with work, as well as it's a two-way street. So they also can be quite involved and give advice for you. And it's really nice to see that other people have gone through what you're going through and have been able to progress their careers how I myself would like to progress, and are happy and confident and competent in their specialties.
You've mentioned the professional and the private, if you like, benefits of undertaking a rural internship, but have you got any advice for any future medical students who'd be considering that move?
Basically, do it. Take every opportunity you can. Go to placements, travel, visit hospitals, visit places that you didn't think or you might not think that you'd like to go, because you can be very surprised with what regional and rural places have to offer And the more experience you get means that you can have a more well-rounded decision about where you'd like to practice.
Great. And there's advice for others, but did you receive any advice that you remember that stuck with you during your training that's remained with you today?
Yes. So during school, I had an English teacher once tell me that when you get a test back, no matter how well you've done, look at where you lost marks or could do better, because that's where you can improve. That stayed with me because I always want to improve and do better and do the best that I can. So there's always room for improvement, and I think that can be used in many situations.
So just finally, where will Grace Nelson or Dr. Grace Nelson be in 5 or 10 years' time?
In a perfect world, I would be a respiratory and general medicine physician in a regional hospital with a family.
That's Dr. Grace Nelson, second-year postgraduate intern at Dubbo Health Service. This is Destination Medicine. Thanks for listening.
Regional training hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.